Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Curious Cutlets podcast with me, Anshika. Today is our 10th episode, and we're really excited to have a special guest with us. We have Mr. Omang Agarwal. Umang happens to be a really good friend and also works at Coursera. Umang, I can go on and on about you, but I'll leave the introduction to you to give to our viewers or guests today.
Thank you so much, Anshika. Hey everyone, this is Omang. I am part of a very cool company that most of you might know, at least at this point of time. It's called Coursera, and I'm really happy to be on this podcast and get a chance to share more and answer some questions.
Great. We're also very excited to have you, Umang. In fact, as I told you, I got a lot of my friends and people working in the education sector to give us a few questions, and I've picked top 5 questions for today. For those of you who are listening, the agenda for today is to talk about the skills that are in demand by employers today and the skills that we think will continue to prevail until 2025 or even beyond that. We will also take recommendations from Omang on Coursera, courses to do on Coursera today, and which will be in relation with the first question. Then we talk about applying so employability of these courses and what is the difference between bit-sized learning and long courses. So this is just a gist of what you can hear in the coming 20-30 minutes. So I'll start with asking you, Umang, if I'm not wrong, you work in the skills department at Coursera. So, in your opinion, what are the top 10 skills in demand by employers today?
That's one question we get asked every day. So I'm part of what is called a skill transformation team at Coursera, and we're
Hmm.
basically in-house consultants that are helping governments, universities, and corporations all around the world figure out what their learning development priorities should be at this point of time. As a company, Coursera does an annual research. It's called the annual skills index that we complete. We've now renamed it to Global Skills Index. And the 2020 version of Global Skills Index has basically come out of two specs. One is our consumer platform, which is where all of you guys might be learning. That's Coursera.org. And we have, learners from different regions, countries, different age groups, different sectors belonging to different functions. So what our machine learning tools do is they try and compile which learner or what kind of learners from what sector and what industry and what functions are learning what. And because we're lucky to have about 70 million learners now, that's the data set that builds up to tell us, what are the top 10 skills that people are wanting to learn. And this, along with our in-house team that does a lot of research working with different Fortune 500 corporations, tries to figure out, where the world is heading when it comes to skills. So that's our background of Global Skills Index. I think the question in itself is quite broad, as I've already been discussing with Anshika. And I think it's important to
Mhm.
therefore lay down the fact that, we divide these skills into three parts: business, data science, and technology. And having said that, there are other subsets that one could also think of. You could think of uh, your social skills. You could also think of personal development. You could, also think of physical sciences and engineering, social sciences, etc. But why I want to touch upon these three filters that I've chosen is because they form 75% of what is being learned on our platform. And also to point out the fact here, Coursera started from a university and from a US university, which means our platform has always been very diverse with culture. You'll find history, sociology, economics courses sitting right alongside web development and machine learning courses. And yet we found out that over 50% of our learners are actually concentrating their time on business skills, technology skills, and data science skills. So let's try and go a little deeper. I'll start with business skills. The three skills that have really emerged for us this year have been project management, data storytelling, and digital marketing. Now, I know all three of these sound fascinating. Some of these also might sound cliche, and that's only because it is sometimes difficult to understand, what do we exactly mean by digital marketing? Is social media marketing digital marketing? Is like social media analytics digital marketing? Is search engine optimization digital marketing? So there are a lot of questions that we can, go deeper down to try and understand digital marketing. And the same with data storytelling and project management. I'd like to start from project management only because It's one of those older skills that people have always been fascinated and asked to learn. I think it typically comes from the engineering project management environment. Why this is intrinsically becoming important is because today's workforce requires themselves to work alongside machines and not just humans. And when you have humans controlling machines and processes, you need to set up the right ways in which cross-functional teams could work, your team could work, and projects that are coming up could be handled, considering initiating the project, planning the project, managing the risk, budget, human resources, relationship, etc. So which is why project management intrinsically is becoming important. I'd like to highlight one feature here that I've personally seen to be a challenge for a lot of corporates and workforce people in the workforce, and that's relationship management. The emotional quotient that goes
Yeah.
behind both uh, the managing their own teams as well as managing projects and managing client relationships. So that's one of the most major factors that people are wanting to learn. And mind you, it's not an easy thing to learn, especially when you're using an edtech tool. You might take a lot of time to be able to understand, how do I go about this? I remember the first time I was being interviewed for this job, the interviewer asked me, how do you differentiate between soft skills and hard skills? I was like, I would say soft skills are like reading novels and books. They might take time, but ultimately they'll lead you somewhere. Whereas hard skills, I can learn, I can spend an hour and I might know things that I can apply.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we are when it comes to project management. It's one of those skills that looks very easy in the face value, but when you try and understand the emotional quotient and relationship management aspect of it, that's where the tough part comes. And that also leads me to another aspect, which is data storytelling. Now, again, at the face value, it just looks like there's a bunch of data analytics being done, and we're probably trying to build some presentations around that data. However, I've been deep diving into understanding what storytelling would really mean. And there's this wonderful course on our platform. It's by Northwestern University, what we can also call as Kellogg, and it talks about leadership storytelling. And three professors who feature on that particular piece of content or course are basically the three heads of departments they have for different programs within marketing at the Kellogg School. Uh, so it's one of those fascinating courses, and I think the one thing that I learned through that is how your brand is authentic, and at the same point of time, your brand keeps telling a story that the audience would be fascinated to understand. So, I'm
Yeah.
talking to you about global skills index, Anshika, and if I was to take an example of data storytelling, the global skills index is a particular example of data storytelling. I've got 70 million learners and ton of their data that is boiled down to give me 10 insights and saying, hey, listen, these are the top 10 skills in the world right now, and here I am trying to tell you the story of these top 10 skills. So that's what I mean by data storytelling. You have got a bunch of data, and then how do you present that data, whether digitally, whether you write a research paper, give out an advertisement, you have a social media post, you build a presentation, or you come on a podcast. Any of that is data storytelling. And for all the students out there trying to listen to this and learn from here, you might also be fascinated with the word digital humanities. That's another form of data storytelling.
Hmm.
Since we don't have all the time on the podcast now, I would leave it up to you to actually find out what that means. um, so yes, that's where we can conclude with business. um, I do think it's worth talking both about technology and data science skills, where I will try and touch go with some of those because these are terms that you may have already heard a number of times. But when we talk about data science, I think the two most popular and growing factors on our website have always been Python and SQL. Python because that's one language people not just use for accessing web data, but also to manage a lot of data science work and machine learning projects. Uh, and SQL because all of us today are working at companies that are transforming themselves digitally. Uh, I used to work at an NGO that ran programs in public schools, and suddenly, the NGO got funding, and we became an edtech platform. So from moving, the journey was moving from pen and paper or data on Excel sheets. I had to now go inside the edtech tool and try and build that data, which basically meant I moved from Excel right down to SQL. And mind you, SQL is not as easy as we think. There's a ton of coding to be done. You need to ask the computer for data every time you require it. And then it's so easy to be able to visualize that. And the same with Python, if I want to take the same data I've gotten from an SQL query, and try and understand it visually, or try and build a machine learning or a predictive modeling tool around it, Python is your go-to language at this point of time. So I'd say the two most important
Yeah.
things. If you're a product person or in a product company, go ahead and start learning SQL now. And if you're just another person wanting to learn data science and build ahead of your Excel curve, Python is your go-to language. For all those who are just proficient in SQL or Python or any one of these R or Stata kind of tools, I think now it's time that you start looking at deep learning processes or natural language processing programs, or also look at cloud and data engineering with TensorFlow. And these are all the new and upcoming things. And in a post-COVID situation, I cannot emphasize it enough as to how much we're going to require all of these skills day in and day out. I think the last bucket worth diving is technology. And I think it's worth mentioning the fact that when we talk about technology, we're actually shooting for the stars and yet not really having a target. We're talking about tons and tons of different technologies. And it's probably not possible on a podcast to be able to cover all of this. But I'm going to touch base about 5 different technological subjects that have been touched on our platform and people are learning a lot about it. The first one is, of course, blockchain. It's one of those dirty cryptocurrency words that you've been hearing with governments banning it, allowing it, banning it, allowing it. And then finally, we've got a financial technology revolution that's happening. Your the bank next door probably might become the app on your app drawer and not an address in your community. So that's where we come out with blockchain. And that's one place we understand blockchain to be placed. But I think another way of understanding blockchain is to try and go and have a deeper dive in understanding, how decentralization is being done through blockchain, how smart contracts can be done, how mutually accepted and transparent ledgers could be built over blockchain. And blockchain as a technology could not just be used in financial technology, but also in stuff like operations, supply chain. You could also use it in public policy and running public programs. Everywhere you could see blockchain coming up as a revolution. Now I do understand, one might have a question, why blockchain? We don't even know how people are going to use it. And that's exactly why.
Yeah.
20 years from today, we did not know Android would actually have thousands of engineers working on it. Today, most of us have Android phones. Of course, with no offense to all the iOS users, we do have a lot more Android phones than iOS. And 20 years back, we did not know that existed as a technology, which is why this is the right time to go down, understand all applications and use cases of blockchain, and see how you can contribute to that revolution. Moving ahead, I think two other aspects. One is cybersecurity. As we move towards a better digital age with more players and people coming, building tools and applications and their shops online, I think cybersecurity is going to be a major factor. Not just because there exist cybersecurity, cyber attacks, or that people are trying to attack whatever you've built online or digitally, but also because you need to understand that a lot more of your workforce is now going to share their identity, their history, and everything else that they do online with you. Now, I work for a
Hmm.
tech
Hmm.
company, and honestly, I don't have 2 laptops. I have one laptop given to me by my company, and I work on the same one. And I'm accessing, all the Amazon shopping lists that I have through the same, while I'm also completing and doing all my work on our website, which means there's a ton of data from every person that's coming. And there's going to be a crisis if you do not start securing your systems. You have learners data, as in our case, you have employers data, you also have data coming from universities and companies that are building up our courses. And at the same point of time, all of this data might be eyed by hackers, or if not maintained well, could also be blasted off in an accident. or you could, lose it if you're not auditing it. So yeah, cybersecurity is going to be important and even more important as we go ahead. We do have some amazing cybersecurity certifications by various companies on our platform, including Google, that has built a lot of IT and cybersecurity courses on our platform. So yeah, that's the right place to go and check out if you're one of those IT professionals or cybersecurity people. The last two I would touch, one would be cloud computing. I think you've heard a lot of this, and while a lot of people
Yeah.
find themselves on cloud nine because they know how to use cloud computing, a lot more don't, and that's only because cloud computing is growing every day. I'm sure most have heard about Google Cloud, and then many more may have heard about Amazon Web Services, and then a lot, a few out of those may have also heard about Azure. And now, as we are going
Hmm.
forward, there are private clouds being built by companies. There are clouds, that are being mutually shared. If you're working in a co-working space, companies are also using hybrid models where they have their own private cloud network and they're using an Amazon plus an Azure plus a Google Cloud platform, and that's a lot. So, cloud computing is not just important because we need cloud and storage because we are going digital, but also to understand companies are using various forms of cloud computing. They do not want to restrict themselves to their own private network. They do not want to restrict themselves to one company's network. And a hybrid model is one, not so easy to build, two, very difficult to maintain, three, you're putting a lot of money to build that. Hence, four, you would always want to make sure you're getting the right value out of it. So I think if there are people out there who are really going to write down some Excel sheets and say, hey, listen, this is how much our cloud has helped us do, it's going to be all of those cloud computing engineers in the future. So, yeah, if you're one of those engineers who's interested in cloud computing, again, if you're an IT professional, this is the right time. Go understand the difference between GCP, AWS, Azure, and a private network, and how you could combine all of these together while architecting a secure system. And Anshika, I think the last point that we should touch, and I know this has been a very, very long and boring answer, uh, is web development and user experience. Now, I would just like to, go 5 years behind today. And I see myself going to a very fancy mall, just roaming around different shops, trying to find the right pair of glasses, shoes, clothes, etc. And every time I see a shop that is glittery or has the color black, I'm like, that's the man's shop. That's where I'm gonna go. However, in the next 6 months or a year, 2 years down the line, unfortunately, much of this brick and mortar system may not exist, which is where I will no more be going to
Yeah.
a shop or to a mall to find a shop. I will need your web ID or a web link, and I'm going to go onto your website to find out what exactly do you have that I can buy. So, we're all going to become artists. We're all going to love drawing, and we all need web development and user experience tools to make sure if you have a shopper and you want to hook the shopper, you've actually been able to hook that shopper to your website. And hooking people to your website, that's not the easiest thing to do. uh, there's a ton of work that goes around what functionality you're going to use, the colors, the design, the shapes and sizes. And honestly, for people in the FMCG or clothing and apparels industry, you've got a lot of competition out there. Why not get ahead of the curve by already knowing how to build your kick-ass website? So that's about it. That's our two pieces, actually a lot more, on what are the top 10 skills in 2020.
Great, Umang. I think you don't have to apologize for that being long because it really does add value to everyone who's listening. We are very aware now. In fact, I didn't know half the things you mentioned. So it'll definitely help us to decide courses if we try and do them after this call. But I think I'd like to move on to the question of, choosing courses which are either bit-sized or long courses. So I think where I'm coming from is there are a lot of platforms today which do offer bit-sized learning courses. So you're done in 30, 40, 50 minutes or maybe an hour and a half. There are courses on Coursera that take you about 5, 6, 10 weeks, depending on the course you pick up. Why do you think that is there, A? And how does one in that case decide a course with that kind of those kind of timelines?
Okay, I think the one way to look at it is to just think about reading a Harry Potter novel or reading the self-help novel that you want to, which might be one-tenth the size of it. Um, I would go back to the old school way of defining what we call as curriculum, which is to say that yes, a bite-sized content is very good. It's very attractive. In fact, I find myself retaining a lot more when I go after a bite-sized content piece than when I go after probably a course the size of ours. However, a difference that I've been able to find is that if I do a course on our platform which talks about the theory behind digital marketing or social media analytics, I may have spent about 16 hours learning something, and I do not need to go back and do another course ever to talk about social media analytics. Whereas if I'm doing the same social media analytics over any bite-sized content platform, I might need to take up several courses before I'm absolutely confident of being the right person managing social media. So what I mean to say here is that the difference is in a bite-sized content, you might need to take up several courses before you become really good with that particular skill. Whereas in a longer course like our platform, and I do not mean to promote our platform in any manner, you might just not need to take a second course for the exact same topic. So the difference
Okay.
being, do you want to learn a certain function and just be done with it? Are you looking at an FAQ that you want to get solved with? Or are you looking at learning something and deeply skilling yourself with that particular aspect? So that becomes a major difference while deciding content. However, to all the learners that are listening out there, do not, and I repeat that, do not consider that every long course is always going to help you. Sometimes it's the shorter courses that you really want to do. I mean, I know 75% of Excel, at least I'd like to believe so. But, I sometimes get stuck with things. I may have forgotten them, or I just don't know if a new feature has been added. Right before this call, I was just talking to Anshika and I figured out, there's a new function on Google Sheets where they allow you to sort the data by color coding them. And I was very fascinated. Now, I would not want to go back to a Coursera to learn one of those features. I'd rather go to a bite-sized content, platform to understand what are the top 10
Yeah.
new features that have been added on Excel and Google Sheets. So yeah, it's completely different use cases, Anshika. Do you want to go learn and
Mm-hmm.
be deep at something, or do you want to quickly do something and then move on to the next one?
This makes me wonder then, by now we know that all kinds of courses that you mentioned have value and they make you learn something. But if we look at it from an employer's perspective, I'm curious to know, how do these courses help you to apply for any kind of job? And I think I'm trying to emphasize more at the medium and senior level positions. How do you think they add tangible value?
That's a wonderful question. Uh, I remember having a debate with my roommate, and he's an engineering project manager. He works in an oil and natural gas firm. And he was like, you guys are selling out these courses, but can I really get a job through these courses, or do I grow? Like, how do I add? Like, how
Yeah.
does that course really add to my, the face value of my CV? And I said, it's a good question, and I think as an edtech platform, and I do not mean to speak on behalf of every edtech company, but honestly, every edtech company is struggling with this. And I think the post-COVID era will look very different in terms of accepting, or in terms of companies building general acceptability of online degrees and online courses. I think a
Yeah.
couple of things that I've been able to learn from our learners on how they've used, the platform and how they've been able to gain. I think those are some stories that I can tell, and maybe some of those can be strategies that listeners here could also use. So I think the number one thing was, and I learned this, while doing a social impact project that we support. It's called Coursera for War Veterans. We had a bunch of about 50 veterans and their wives, and they said, our heroes have come back now, and we're looking for jobs. We need something to do. We do not want to go ahead and do operations. And now that they've all come back, our children have grown up. both the husband and wife wanted to learn over our platform and get hold of jobs. And at this point of time, we had a data point saying there's a requirement of about 100,000 plus IT professionals in the world. And in America alone, the number was at least 7% of the overall global requirement. And we said, okay, why don't you guys try a hand at IT? It might take you a couple of months or 3 months to go over several courses on coding, IT fundamentals, cybersecurity, networking, cloud administration, system administration. But at the end of the day, you might find yourselves knowing such a lot that you can actually crack one of those IT interviews. I mean, I'm happy to report that at least
Yeah.
22 of those 50 people actually got onto a job with zero knowledge of IT before that. And while IT might look like somewhat an easier target to achieve, I think for my own, I would like to share my own example. When I came into the Coursera platform, I basically was doing a lot of social science courses. But when I applied for this current job that I have now, I was asked to do a task where I had to build a very fancy presentation. And mind you, my presentation skills were horrible. They were just really bad. So I went on to Coursera and I checked out, what we call as guided projects. Now, we also do have bit-sized content. We call them as guided projects. And, I did a couple of guided projects on how to use Google Slides and how to use Excel to be able to, filter out and find the right data. And in about 6 hours that I spent over Coursera platform, I had finished 4 guided projects, 2 on Excel, 2 on slides. And I was able to make a 60 slide presentation. And I was somebody who had zero clue of how to use Google Slides. I'd been one of those typical PowerPoint guys. But yeah, that's how
Yeah.
it helped me at that point of time. So I mean, these are very much skilling stories. But I do understand listeners would have would have a question. How do I show it on my CV? What do I do about it? I'm a finance guy. I just learned data science. Like, am I going to get a data science job? I mean, honest truth here, it's a game theory concept here. Just imagine you applying for 10 positions for data science, and that there are 90 other people who've applied for the same position, and only 10 out of the 100 of you are going to get selected. The challenge here is many of these other professionals might have been data scientists in their other roles, might have been product managers, might have been working in data companies, and that you are here, a banking professional who suddenly learned machine learning and TensorFlow and can work on self-driving car projects. While you're fantastic in your own skill, you might have larger competition to face. And I don't think at that point of time your skill is being doubted. It's your experience that's being doubted at that point of time. More of experience, work at in smaller roles, build your experience, and then apply for some of these cross-functional roles, or you're wanting to change, where you're wanting to really change your functions. Just before we move on, Anshika, I think it's important to summarize, some of these strategies. So the first example that I gave was just around building your skill and showcasing it. That's a skill that you build
Hmm.
from scratch, zero experience, nothing. The second one we said is, somebody really trying to change their industry or function, and they might face, a lack of acceptability, and that's where they need to go for smaller roles and then change their industry or function. I do think that there's a third one, and that kind of, matches my example, but also to look at it from. So I had a ton of, researchers, people who loved economics and wanted to, go ahead and research more. However, they understood maths, they just didn't know data, and they wanted to apply for consulting firms. And what many of these people did were they went on for the classic IBM data science specialization that we have on our platform. And while doing that, they also took a very fascinating game theory course from St. Petersburg University, where we have 15 different PhD faculties trying to teach you how game theory is developed and how you could build the next best business strategy only using maths. And I found that many of these have been able to place themselves at great firms like Talberg, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, Adam Smith International. All of these are great economics using firms. So I do think moving ahead and deep skilling yourself, learning a new skill and changing your function
Yeah.
or industry, learning a skill from scratch and then trying to find a job which is most being sought after. I think all of these are different strategies you can use. And honestly, if you really want to show off on your CV, you better get going and start doing some specializations and certificates on, certifications on our platform. A single course or a couple of courses might not earn you that. And, again, this is like a callback to your previous question. Is bit size content going to help me in that case? No. General acceptability of bit size content is very low in that case. But if you've done two specializations, one from, let's say Wharton, the other one from New York University on our platform, you've got a lot to show on your on your CV, saying I've just spent the last 200 hours trying to learn finance technology transformation, and at the same point of time, Google Cloud Computing. And that's a lot to learn and be able to prove yourself with.
Definitely. And I think the fact that you were able to summarize it really got the points, kicking. I think before we end, I know we can go on and ask you so many questions. I have so many friends messaging me because they were really excited to have someone, all of us are using Coursera on a daily basis. So if you have someone who works in an edtech platform like this, and someone like who's so active in sharing their experiences, it just makes all of us really curious. But before I get to the last question, there's something that just come up to my mind while talking during this conversation, is that Umang, I come from a traditional educational setup. That's the profession I am in. So today, the kind of questions that we
Mhm.
get is an online learning equivalent to a master's degree or an undergrad degree that you get on campus? Now, the reason I ask you this is I know both of us have had international higher education experiences, and now both of us are, sort of in the education space. You work in a edtech, and I work in a traditional setup. The reason I ask this question is, do you think that that's the direction we are, going towards, or do you think that a degree cannot be replaced by an online learning course?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I was having a chat with somebody who's a university advisor on our board of directors about the same. And a couple of examples I'd like to take. So there are at least two known colleges, which I can't name over the podcast right now, who've actually, closed down their MBA programs in the last couple of weeks in the US. They were facing losses, they did not get enough admissions, etc. So they face problems. A surprising factor, both these universities also have an MBA program running on our platform. But what I mean is there are certain programs you can run online, and then there are certain that you cannot run online at all. I've always found it very difficult to build soft skills via an online program because I'm like, isn't this supposed to teach me how to better work with humans? I don't even have a human around here. What am I doing? And that used to be a large
Agreed.
case 5 years behind us. But in today's time, I looked on to one of these courses on our platform, and I found that there were 10 other people learning alongside me at the same point of time, and all of us could chat. We in fact finished 3 projects together while finishing up that course, and that's where the human interaction came live. So I do feel that as we are going ahead, we are evolving in that theory of saying, hey, these are programs I can do online, these are programs I can't do online, and then many that we can't do online are also becoming online slowly, which slowly has made me realize about a lot of our university partners. And I can talk about, NMIMS University, I can talk about KL University, Manipal, I can also talk about Geetam, who we are currently working with. We've also got universities in Nigeria, in Russia, in the US, in the Caribbean, in Australia. All of these universities are trying to look at blended learning programs, which is to say that there is a bunch of hard skills that you best can learn over computer, because some of these are very computing skills that we're talking about. I mean, I can't really learn Excel by interacting with 10 different humans as much as I can do while interacting with a computer. That's just logic. The same with Python and
Yeah.
every other cloud computing, or other technological or data science courses. But when it comes to certain business courses like emotional quotient, being able to people manage, being able to manage projects, being able to manage products, being able to do marketing, etc. I do feel that, we're still at this juncture where a lot of offline requirements exist. And I'd feel rather more comfortable that these offline requirements exist and, stay for a longer period of time than not. Because obviously, I mean, why would I just want to learn in a silo with a computer being my only friend? And even if there are people inside that, system that are able to help me, it just doesn't satisfy my need. So I'd say blended approach, that's the right approach to do right now. And for all of you learners out there, I think a larger blended approach of, you learning things over online platforms, you also learning similar or, complementing things over your university or through offline workshops. And then going ahead to, build projects, whether online or offline, while collaborating with people. I think that's the real flavor of blended learning that we need as we move ahead. So for all of you who just
Yeah,
thought,
yeah.
courses are now online, life's going to be easy. Well, if you really want to enjoy, and enjoying is the only way I think one could learn, you really would need to blend yourself in different environments before you can say, I can do it.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. And this brings us to the last question. Among all of us, want your top recommendation on courses that we can do on your platform. I know it's really hard. You have several thousands of courses, but if you have to just give us top three courses that all of us can try and do, we'd really appreciate that.
So I'd go one by one on the top 10 skills that I listed, and I think that'll actually help everyone figure out, what they want to do. This also
Yeah.
gets me into trouble a lot of times because we would want to treat our, content partners all the same way. But I would say that, for all the learners, when you come to project management, we've got a very nice specialization on project management. There's 7 courses. It's the only project management, specialization that we have on our platform. And I think that's one of the best things that you could, invest your time in. It'll take you time, probably a few months, but you should be good by the end of it. Digital marketing, we've got this very, very, very nice specialization by University of Illinois that also just took their MBA degree off online on our platform. And they've got a specialization program called digital marketing that you can access over our platform. I'd say, this is one of those holistically developing programs that you could take up. Again, it might run into several weeks, but if you want to learn, you all need to invest some time into it. We've got digital storytelling, and I think that's one of the most fascinating skills that I've personally come across this year. I've invested a lot of time, and we've got a fantastic specialization called data visualization with Tableau. I think for all of you people out there who's scared about visualizing data, here is the right course for you. You don't need any prerequisite knowledge of Excel and databases and visualization. This one's going to take you right there. And just to sum up, some of these other courses, we've got a course by Dr. Chuck, one of our most famous faculty from University of Michigan on Python. It's called Python for Everybody. And we've got one course on
Yeah.
SQL, which is by Duke University. And the last one that I would want to touch upon, and I think all of you guys should really go check out content that's built by them, is a company called deeplearning.ai. The company was started by Andrew Ng, who also happens to be one of the co-founders alongside Daphne Kohler. He was a professor at Stanford University, in fact, the head of department of machine learning. And he was also the person behind Google's machine learning tools and programs. He then started a company after Coursera called deeplearning.ai. And I think deeplearning.ai has about 100 and something courses on our platform. So for all of you people out there who want to just swim into this humongous pool and ocean of data science, here's everything that you need on data science given to you by one content partner. So I hope that has helped you, and I hope to see a lot of you learners actually coming down to the platform, whether ours or anyone else's, and learn. So happy learning.
Great, Umang. It's been wonderful talking to you. I anyway really enjoy talking to you, even when you're not recording a podcast, because you really do add value and you bring in a lot of experience from not only your platform but also other experiences you've had working in the field. And I'm more than confident that all the listeners today have really learned how to go about upskilling. We've learned the difference between skilling, upskilling, and deep skilling. And I think that is the most important takeaway I want our listeners to take from today. Please listen to the podcast and subscribe to our channel, the Curious Cutlets podcast. Thank you so much, Umang, for coming today and giving us your time. Yes, we will see you all next Sunday. Bye bye and take care.